This is my spare V8. Now, when I bought this, it was a couple £100 and it had been rebuilt with, you know, no actual proof of an engine builder that done it. So it was cheap. And from looking inside, it does look quite new. It looks like it's had a bit of a refresh. New pistons, new fresh crosshatch on the bores. Looks like it's been bored out. The bearings on the crank are over, 30 over, I think, or 20 over. I need to have another look. But the problem is, I need to have another look at the crank. Because when I took the sump off this after buying it, there was loads of swarf in the bottom of it. And I had a look at the big end bearings, which looked fine. Had a look at the crank main bearings, and they were destroyed. So I thought, okay, swap the new bearings out, and then was turning the engine over by hand, and it just felt tight to me. And then I took a cap back off, had a look at the bearings, and they were scored. So there's two things that's potentially going on. One, whoever he took it to hasn't ground the crank correctly. Or B, the crank hasn't been ground because it's a different start. It might have been all right, and they might have left the mains and just ground the big ends. Which case, I need to look at getting the correct size bearings for the mains, which makes things more confusing because everything's going to be a different whatever. Or he, when he was doing the braking period, just fired it up without priming the oil pump like I did when I changed the cam in that, and he cooked the bearings. But why it would only do the mains, I don't know. So the plan is turn this over, take the bottom out, and then check the crank mains with some Plastigauge, which I've got somewhere, which is I'll show you when we get there. I mean, you can see what this video is going to be. So if I were you, I'd pause the video now and go and get yourself a cup of tea and probably some Garibaldi's and probably some custard creams, because this is going to get, I mean, we're going to get in there, all right? It's going to get, yeah. I'll leave it up to you. Okay, so immediate checks. The caps from front to rear, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then blank, which is the final, which is the last one, which is part of the rear main. Now I want to get in there, I want to have a look at that anyway. This crank has got to come out because the rear main is an old rope seal. So I'll need to change that, and I'll need to change these crucifixes. And the crucifixes are like a little rubber cross which go in here as well. They're a bugger to get in, so I can't wait to do that. These are all numbered correctly, and there's a little arrow on them as well, and they're all facing the right way. So I'm happy things have been assembled this so far on the mains, right? Boom, boom, boom. Next thing I want to have a look at is the big ends. By checking that your rods are in the correct orientation, whether it's a Buick or a Rover, there should be, on the casting of the rods, quite close to the big end, should be a dimple on one side. Now that dimple should face on the right hand bank, the dimple should face the front of the engine, and on the left hand bank it should face the rear of the engine. So dimple, 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 can't get my finger in there, dimple, dimple, dimple. There's dimple, there is a dimple. I want to physically feel that. Ow. Yes. Okay, so dimple's right, so I know the rods are facing the right way. I'm pretty sure that the con rods are the right way. What I'm going to do next is, as usual, I'm getting distracted. I need to take one of the main caps off, and I need to check the clearance between the bearing and the crank journal with some Plastigauge. Plastigauge. I'll show you that when we get to it, alright? But for the time being, I'm going to take one of these off. Beautiful. How much was that on there? 50, yeah. So that was right. 55. I love these old torque wrenches. The ones with the bendy stick. I much prefer these because you can physically see what it is. Doesn't need calibrating, doesn't need checking. Those new electric fancy fandangled things, you need to send them away every so often because they get out of touch. Whereas this, the worst thing that could happen is the arm bends out of place, so you just bend it back. Yeah, they had it right back in the day, you know what I mean? So I'm going to take this bearing cap off. Ooh. And then I'm going to lay a little bit of Plastigauge, yeah, onto the bearing surface, where I'm then going to put the cap back on and torque it up to spec. And then the size of that little piece of plastic should tell me how much space there is between the crank and the bearing, which is the number I'm after. And then from that number I can then make an educated assessment of whether more material needs taking off the crank or not. Now remember the orientation of these and keep the bolts in the same hole. Alright, I'm looking at you in the back. Right, make sure everything you take off here goes back in exactly the same way, place, orientation and torque setting. Alright? Good. Yes, I'm going to use paper towel. Please don't judge me for using a paper towel. You want to be careful getting oil down these holes as well, because there's a bottom down there, it's not a through hole. So if you get oil in there and you're torquing a nut in there, and the oil, the bolt going through the hole will get to the bottom and compress that oil and will crack the casting, which you don't want also. So everything needs to be very, very clean, and you need to be very, very careful. See, look, there's a little bit of scoring there. I think they've ground the mains, and I think they've just polished, no, they've ground the big ends, and I think they've just polished the mains. I don't know, let's find out, eh? We're gonna clean, because I mean, look, that's not right, that's not right. Can you see that? That's a new bearing, you can see. That can't be right. Well, I can't quite, yeah, I can just catch it with my finger. That's not supposed to be like that. That's a brand new bearing that I've put in and just rotated the engine like twice. Can't be right. Strange. Anyway. Because I can't run the engine like that because it'll pop. Bloody thing will seize and then everything will pop. Right, okay. Stop chatting shit, Frank. Plastigauge. It's good, Plastigauge, because it comes with a little bit of instruction as well. So you've got your actual Plastigauges there. Stay there. You've got your Plastigauge gauge there. And you get some instructions. Right, the hardest part turns out to be getting this stuff out the bag. It's a pain in the arse. But I managed to trim one to about the right size. Now I want it to stay on there. A, you want it to stay on there, and B, you want it to be straight as you can, really. Straight as you can get it. Oh, balls. Just pulled a bit off. Alright, anyway. It's supposed to be all the way across. That's what we've got, alright? That's what we're going to have. And remember, now these go back exactly the same way. Excess oil wiped off. I want it to be there. Oh. Okay, good. Sorry for the rain noise, guys. And then we want that much. 55 on these mains on 1 to 4. Oosh, nice. So these are all 50 foot-pounds, or 55 foot-pounds, sorry. This one at the back with the crank, with the next to the flywheel, is 70 foot-pounds. Right, so now that's been torqued up, we'll take it off and we'll have a look at the size of the piece of plastic that's left. So, from reading online and having a look in the manuals and on the forums, that the bearing clearance for these engines are between 0.010 millimeters to 0.048 millimeters. And going off this, I can see that that's probably about 0.039. So I know that that's well within the clearance. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to put this on and I'm going to check the bearing cap clearance on one of the mains. And if that's right, I'm happy this engine's okay. This was the only thing I was really worried about. And it was the only thing that I really wanted to double check before I tried to use this engine. I'll get you in here in a second so you can have a look at the bores and the back of the pistons. It all looks new pretty much. It looks pretty good. So that's great. That's a big weight off my mind. Come and have a look at this engine. So looking inside at the cylinder, see that fresh crosshatch on the surface of the bore. You see the scratch marks there. It's in a sort of diamond shape, crosshatch shape. All of them have been done. You could see a little bit of surface rust from where I've had the engine standing. You can see a little bit of it there, where I've had the engine standing. I've had this engine for about 2 years. Look at the back of the pistons, they're absolutely squeaky clean. So I've had this engine for a couple of years now and I've not used it at all because of this issue. I wasn't sure about it. So there is a couple things more that I want to do on this engine before I start using it. Oh, Christ. And that's to check, like I said before, check the big end bearing clearance. I'll check that in a second. Exactly the same process, can't get it wrong. And then I want to change, I've changed the old rope seal to a new rubber seal on the front. I need to do the same at the back. And I'm sure I've got loads of stuff in the back there. Also what I want to do is once that's done hunky-dory, and then get all this back together and then turn it around, and I want to take the heads off and have a look at the heads. I don't need to, but I would like to. Just because, well, I want to be thorough, really. And plus, this is an earlier engine, so if they've rebuilt this to its original spec, that means that the heads will have smaller exhaust ports, a little bit less horsepower than what mine is currently. Oh, and I want to make sure that there's nothing broken in there, really. Ultimately, I just want to make sure that it's all hunky-dory and that it's all been done. And also, if they have done a thorough rebuild on it and spent the money, they might, with any luck, have put hardened valve seats in it. So we'll see, eh? Because this is a 60s unit. This is off a P5B. I'm pretty sure. Automatic, going off the serial number. Like I said, this is only going to be a stand-in, really. I'm going to put this in and then use it so that I can rebuild. Bloody hell, what is all that? So I can rebuild that one I've got in the Jensen at the minute. This is just as a remedy for that. Now the clearances of these are slightly different to what the main bearings are. These are 0.015 millimeters to 0.055 millimeters, I'm pretty sure. So we'll have another look with our Plastigauge and see where we're at. Should be fine. I've got confidence in these. 0.050. So these are quite tight. But they're within spec. Okay. Right, I'll show you what I was talking about. Ah, yeah, it's an old rope seal. In a two-part rope seal. And, wow. I'm going to have to change all these bearings. Whoa. That's not cool. Okay, the crank's going to have to come out. Anyway, so you can see the old rope type seal here. And you can see the crucifixes. Oh, can you see that? There's the crucifixes on either side. And there's an old rope type seal in there in two parts. That's one half. And the other half is in here. Now I just said I need to take the crank out, and I'm about to show you why. I will fish it out. There is loads of material that I've just seen in that oil journal then. Oh no. Look. So from the machining process, that is annoying. That's really annoying, because all that material that's in those oil journals still will come out, will be forced out of those journals up against the bearings, and then will get sucked into this space between the bearing and the crank, and will eat the crank and the bearings. That's annoying. Ah, man. Okay. I've got a sofa to move at home. I'm moving house this weekend, so I've got stuff to do as well, which isn't ideal. But, okay, so, yeah, right, that's fine. Silver lining is that the crank's correct, the clearances are correct. Okay, yeah, okay. Now my next question, I think, let me know if any of you guys know at home, is can I adapt this old bearing cap to accept a new type oil seal? And will I be able to do that in two parts? Oh no, I don't think I'm gonna. I don't think I'm gonna be able to, you know. We'll see. Bugger. We'll see. That's a shame. Anyway, I'm gonna see if I can. I'm gonna see if I can adapt this to accept a new oil seal, plastic, a rubber one, rather than this rope thing. And I would call this a success today, because the idea was to go in and check these clearances, which I have, and I'm happy that the crank's been ground right. That means that all the machining work's been done correctly. Now, what I need to do is, it really pains me to say it, I'm going to have to get this onto the table. I'm going to have to take the flywheel off, and I'm going to have to undo all these bolts and take the crank out, and I need to blow the crank out because there's still swarf and machining material in the oil journals of that crank. And I just don't want there to be, because when this starts running, oil gets pumped down channels to the crank directly. It's a bugger. So that means that oil will then pump through the crank and will force that swarf and metal material against the crank surfaces. It's just, you don't want it in there, man. You do not want it in there. Which could explain why some of the bearings are pretty pants. It's not great, but yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for watching today. So far, I'm happy that this engine's going to work. There's a couple of little bits I need to do ultimately to start, you know, until it's ready. But until that point, I'm quite happy that this is going to run. So the next stage is going to be cleaning this out, getting this ready, getting it all buttoned back up, having a look in the top end, making sure that's hunky-dory. Once that's fine, I need to then remove the engine and gearbox out of my Jensen Healy together as an ensemble. And then I need to split the engine and box, take the bell housing and the good stuff off the box, put it onto my old box, which I know the bearings are good in, because the bearings in this one are not good. And then marry that box up to this engine, and then put this engine in the car, button it all up, and then rebuild that engine and that gearbox. Oh, and I need to put a new back axle on as well. Yeah. So I've got quite a bit to do. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. It's as informative as I can make it. Like, be warned. I'm not a machinist. I'm not an engine builder. I look up things online on the internet and the YouTubes, and I do what I can. I have no money. I have no money to send this to somebody to do, so I do it, and I do it as best as I can. So please be warned, if you're planning on using these videos for any sort of instructional purposes, just take it with a pinch of salt, right? I might do all this, put it in, and it might seize up and explode, so just on your own head be it. If you've got a project that you've been meaning to get hold of and do a little bit of work on, please do. One step at a time. All you've got to do is a tiny bit. You haven't got to build, Rome wasn't built in a day. All you've got to do is just eat away at it, one day at a time, just a half an hour at a time if you can. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one, which will be more to do with this and more to do with the Jensen. Take care. See you later. Right. I suppose I need to get you on the table now, so I'll get the crane back out of this.